Hello, my name is Kenna Uzowihe, and I did a researching project on the topic of learning styles. My contribution was to perform a meta-analysis of the thinking of both proponents and skeptics to help bring a better understanding to this topic as a whole. I'd like to thank Christopher Nicholson for mentoring me on this. So let's start by answering the question, what are learning styles? Learning styles have been defined as an individual's characteristic approach to learning and studying. Generally, we've classified students into four main learning styles. The first are visual learners, which use things such as diagrams and pictures. The second are audio learners, which include things such as audio books or listening to a lecture. The third are reading and writing learners, which are self-explanatory, pretty much reading out of a book. And the fourth are kinesthetic, which are learners through experience, and they use mediums such as labs that you see in science and whatnot. So what's the current state of learning styles, and what's the goal of my researching project? First of all, learning styles has to do with studying of the brain, which has been known to be a very unknown and gray area. It's very complicated. Currently, learning styles are not integrated in general education systems simply because there's not enough evidence to justify it. And this has led on to an ongoing debate between both proponents and skeptics, where proponents are constantly coming out with theories and skeptics are simply pointing out how researchers are contradicting each other. So my goal in this project is to help alleviate this argument by bringing a better understanding to the topic as a whole. So why do proponents believe in learning styles, and how are they going about to prove it? First of all, the reasoning behind this whole thing is the differences in individuals is evident in an educational setting. Every student has subjects that they are good in, and there are certain subjects that they struggle in. To prove this theory, they pretty much piggyback off of previous researches and come up with models of their own. But generally, proponents understand that this is an ongoing research as it has to do with the studying of the brain, which could be very complicated. Skeptics, on the other hand, have their own reasoning as to why they refuse this concept of learning styles. The first is confusing terminology. When researching this topic, you'll run into terms such as learning styles, learning strategies, cognitive styles, and the list goes on, which all have similar meanings, but they're different in some way. This could be confusing. Secondly is inaccurate testing. Currently, there are no standards to perform these psychological tests that we're trying to do. And there's no way of protecting ourselves from noise, such as, let's say, students answering questions wrong on purpose. Thirdly is designing ideal learning environments to match these learning styles. This is definitely an obstacle that proponents have to overcome before they are able to prove this concept of learning styles. Now that we have a pretty good background of learning styles and the views of proponents and skeptics, let's take a look at the research methodology I used for this project. So for this project, I used three main methods to gather data for analysis. The first was studying the background of some of the most famous researchers in this topic. By doing this, I was hoping to find biases within the researchers and hopefully put their perspectives in the right context. The second method was by posting online surveys. By this, I was hoping to get the understanding level of my peers and get their perspectives on this topic as well. Thirdly was to start a post on Piazza. By doing this, I was hoping to start a conversation between both proponents and skeptics to help shine light on things that I may have not have found throughout my research. So now let's look at the data that I've gathered. The first are the biases from the researchers. The first researcher that I studied is Neil Flemings, who is a proponent of learning styles. When he did his researching, learning styles was a new concept, and skeptics simply didn't have enough reasoning yet to go against this concept, as skeptics have always piggybacked off the results of proponents to point out how they're contradicting each other. My second researcher here is Philip M. Newton, who was a skeptic of learning styles. But as I look back at a lot of Philip M. Newton's work, he had a lot of negative publications, and it seemed like he was always out to disprove certain concepts that are out there. The third was Lynn Curry, who was a proponent who then turned into a skeptic. Lynn Curry seemed to be fighting for the school systems and therefore always agreed with the results of newest researches to back it up. All these biases that I found within these researchers helped point out to me what the reasoning behind the stances that they took. Let's now take a look at the results I got from my surveys. The first is there appears to be a 50-50 ratio of beginners to experts of learning styles. So that tells me that half of the population has heard of learning styles and half have not. There's an 85-15% ratio of proponents to skeptics. That means there's an overwhelming number of individuals that believe in learning styles. It's evident that the reasoning behind proponents has been that there's different abilities for students depending on the setting. Also, kinesthetic was the most favored learning style throughout my peers. Fifthly, audio was least favored. Also, for my surveys, I was able to put a correlation between reading and writing and visual learning, which kind of tells me that there could be classes and subclasses to these learning styles, as in reading and writing could be a type of visual learning. And overall, it seems that learning styles has a very solid definition, as respondents were very consistent in defining learning styles. It's just that the understanding is shaky. But we can't ignore the skeptics as a whole, as they believe that this is simply an excuse for underperforming students. Through my conversation on my Piazza post, I was able to find an evident difference between the way students view this topic and the way teachers and instructors view this topic. Students seem to be more proponents of this concept, and they relied more on their experience as far as in classrooms. They've always understood that students are better in certain subjects than others, but aren't as good as other students in other subjects. Professors, on the other hand, were more of skeptics, and this was driven more by the researchers that they have done in the past. So this causes me to believe that the more you research this topic, the more confused you can get, and you are prone to becoming a skeptic of this overall concept. So, based on these findings, what are my conclusions on learning styles? The first is, it's pretty evident and widely known that individuals do have different approaches to learning and studying. I think where the divide is to decide whether these learning styles are natural or habitual. As in, are you born with these styles or do you develop them over time? Also, learning styles seems to have a very solid definition, as proponents were very consistent in defining learning styles. It's just we have a long way to go in understanding it. Also, the more you know about this topic, the more you can get confused and are prone to becoming a skeptic. Finally, proponents and skeptics need to see the communication between each other as working together rather than seeing it as a debate. Proponents should continue to come up with theories, and skeptics can simply criticize for proponents to improve. Seeing this as a debate can cause some divide and really slow down our progression in this topic. I'd like to thank you for viewing my presentation on my project, and I'd like to give a big thanks to Christopher Nicholson for mentoring me on this topic. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.